How many courses do we have? I think we have 11 courses that we've done total. So, but the two new courses that we're working on, the first one is the CompTIA CASP certification. Has everyone in here heard of it? I'm going to show a little promotion with it, whatever. But it basically is very similar to, if you look at the reviews and so on, it's very similar to the CISSP, right? Except the test is a little bit different, and you don't have to have the level of experience you have for CSSP. Yeah?
And also the annual fee is
yeah. So annual fee won't be as much, and if you go up on CompTIA's website, they explain why they came up with it and so on. So, but I taught a information security management course over the last couple of years, and I teach it both at graduate school and at our college as part of our capstone. And I thought I would just incorporate some of those things into this course. So basically, this course is our last course. It really deals more with management, right? And we had a lot of discussion on our campus. Do you really need a management course for someone coming out of a 2-year degree program? Well, our advisory committee, overwhelmingly, every person on the advisory committee, every single member, we have 12 members on our advisory committee, all said they think it would be beneficial. And not only that, we've had students come back and ask, do you have any, are there anything we could take here on management? Because we're having to deal with everything from asset management, risk assessment, all the kind of things in the domains that we probably don't cover at the 2-year level, and really is part of why they came up with the CASP certification. All right. So we're going to incorporate this as part of our capstone course. Right. So I've been working on this with a group of graduate students from FAMU, Florida A&M. Over the last year and a half, we've been working with historically black colleges, and I found some really good talent in engaging them in competitions. So as part of our grant, I hired a couple of the grad students and had to help me put some of this stuff together, and that's where the course is really coming from. So they did a lot of the development, and I sort of gave them the groundwork where to go with it and so on. So I thought I'd start off with showing you a video that sort of introduces the. I think it's a great video. I use this in our introduction to information security, because I think it really has the mindset of what we want students to be thinking about when they go into cybersecurity. So if you haven't seen the video, I think it's a really good thing to use in your courses in promoting your programs. I use this in every orientation course. Every time we touch a high school student, I try to show this. They sort of get it. Oh, all right, now I see what this profession's all about. In fact, Dan, this in here, we did a focus group last month, talking about cybersecurity at the high school and engaging parents and students and increasing awareness of the opportunities and type of professions that people go into with this. Because there really is such an ignorance. Most people have no idea that the jobs are out there and so on. And part of the focus group is that I showed this video, and most of them were like, yeah, this gets it. I think they did a great job on it. Even it's simple, but I think you get the idea of it. So, hopefully we can really get this. Nice job on it, didn't they? I think it's a great video, and really, I don't know, the kids have really respond to it, and we've got a lot of good comments back from the parents that we should be using as well. I'm going to read their website. The background you got to have to get that, right? So I think this makes a little bit more sense in putting a capstone together for someone to have a 2-year degree in this area, right? So with that said, part of what this whole certification is taking it to the next level. So the one thing I do like about this certification, anyone taking the test? It's actually a good test. What do you think of it? Okay. Oh, I think it's easier too, but it's more practical, isn't it? I think they're more practical kind of things. I thought the questions were written a little better. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right, and that's part of why we are looking to, incorporate it part of our curriculum. Yeah, exactly. So that's why we're looking at. Not that I would discourage our students from going to CSSIA. I mean, we're still a global partner with IC Squared, and we still teach that to both our instructors, as part of the center, and also in our non-credit area, and we're going to continue to do that. But for our students, I almost think this is much more appropriate to level this is. Right. 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 So what we did in this course, the prerequisite of this course is, of course, students have had to go through A+ and hardware and software kind of stuff. They have had to learn some operating systems, so they've had Microsoft courses, they've had some Linux courses, they've had some networking courses, they've had network security courses, they've had Security Plus. So, this was designed at a level where they should now start to understand some things about operational security. Right? So what I tried to do when we wrote this was to write exercises to make them actually go through the process of managing an information system. Right? And part of what we're going to do in this capstone is that they are going to actually have to work with local businesses or municipalities or whatever in actually developing an information security plan. And we're going to make them actually go through documents like the ISO 2700 series stuff. We're going to have those documents now available as part of the course. Right? We're going to expose them to controls and how to implement controls. So what I thought I would do in this section is just show you some of the exercises. I don't want to go through a page turn of all that. I'll show you some of the examples of each of the material, but I really wanted to focus mainly on the exercises that we developed as part of it. All right? So I'll go back here. And the full course will be available. So where do I shrink it? Okay. Yeah. like in quality to get to my desktop?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so when we package a course, typically these are the things that we're going to distribute with this course. It'll be totally free. It was all developed with federal dollars. So we'll have instructional materials. So I'll give an example of PowerPoint. So each one of these modules will have PowerPoint that we developed. Okay. Now, this is probably the worst acronym ever designed. Most of you have heard of the NISGTC. Crazy acronym. We were part of that consortium for Department of Labor. But basically, these are the PowerPoints. So every lesson has PowerPoints that we develop with it that covers key terms and reviews some of the questions that were part of the objective and so on. So if you take a look at this one, this is just one of the 12. So we introduce the objectives, and then we go into 10 different topics. And then we end with introduction to some of the exercises themselves. So there is instructional materials that go along with every single module. Right? And then we have, with most modules, we will have exercises. So what I try to do with the exercises is I try to put them in some form that I could use to collect the data and also to provide sort of an intuitive environment for students to complete their work. Right? So this is one of the first ones, and if you go, each one has an introduction. So if you look at the tab for an introduction, first thing we're going to go into here is doing a data analysis of vulnerability statistics. Right? So we're actually going to have them. How many have looked at the CA2Y application process? One of the things in there was what? That most of us probably didn't have. But the students had to be able to do data analysis, create graphs, and all this type of stuff. Right? We didn't have the exercise that did that. Because you got to prove it now, right? The CA2Y, you got to prove it. Well, this exercise should enable you to prove it. Right? So we're basically going to have them go out to the CV database and a couple of websites. How many have seen like the CVE detail website? Anyone was used that in class? Does everyone teach CVEs in class? Hopefully. Common vulnerability exploits, and they get the description and the numbers, they know how to reference it back to a pen tester and so on, right? So this is a really cool site because what they've done is all kinds of statistical analysis around the CVEs. Right? So if you haven't been to this site, I'll give you copies if you'd like it, but I'd go to this site. And we actually have them now go in and mine data, relevant data, that would be associated with the organization. Have them do, have any of the students actually been involved in doing a SWOT analysis? So that's what this is. They're going to do a mini SWOT analysis with the company that we assign. Right? So we're going to go in and they're going to look at internal and external resources, and they're going to identify the strengths, right? And we want them to basically go through and talk about the internal strengths of that organization, right? A description and then impact. So what are the things we can build upon within our information security management plan? And before this, I sort of go into the whole idea of what is an information security management plan. How do you build it? What are the components of it? And so on. The whole rest of the class, that's what they're doing. And we're aligning it right to the CASP as we go along, the CASP certification we go along. So then we go into weaknesses. So what are some of the things that our organization struggles with? Right? Then we start to look at external. What are the opportunities that we have? And threats. And then what I did is basically built this into an analysis. So as they start to fill out the tables, this builds their SWOT analysis form. So they sort of see how they can build their own. This is a tool I've used when I did consulting in doing SWOT analysis. It's just a simple spreadsheet, but it builds it, makes it start to see a visual comparison of the outside and internal factors that are going to impact our plan, right? Our strategic and specific plan. How do I grade it? I have built into this, I have some rubrics of things that we're looking for, the levels of what we're looking for at this segment. There are some specific items we talked about when we do SWOT analysis. There's across the domains, there's some specific things that we're going to be looking for. And I think you'll see that as you go through some of the other exercises, things that we're really going to focus on. It's not a complete right and wrong answers, because there are no really right and wrong answers. Everyone's sort of doing their own organization. I break them up as teams, typically 3 or 4 people in a team, and they're going to actually go through this process. Right? And from there, we want to dig deeper now. So now we're going to have to go in and actually oh, by the way, I should tell you that as they're doing this, part of the class is that we have 4 case studies that they go through, right? So like I've tried to make this as relevant as possible. Now, it's not going to be very relevant a couple of years from now, but I'll try to hopefully update this. But my first case study, probably the most famous data breach last year, which was it? Target. So it's a Target breach. I've got about 15 articles that they have to read, and they have to go through and find out, okay, what were the major issues? How many have read about the Target? What are some of the big things that they say caused it? They say the number 1 problem was what? Right, exactly. It was roles and responsibilities. Who was their chief information security officer? They didn't have one. Right? Between the vice presidents, they had their responsibility. They didn't know who had specific responsibilities for specific roles, right? So that's one of the first things that we talk about in here is roles and responsibilities in building an organization plan, right? What are the components? Who are the people you need? What are their roles and responsibilities? What's a good document you could use to identify those things? Well, I went out and I used the NIST framework. How many of you have used the NIST framework? It's a great place to use it in the class, right? You can actually go in and it talks about specific tasks, right? Roles and tasks. And it even identifies specific titles of people within the organization, right? So that's basically what I have them doing this when I sort of set up an example of what we're looking for. And they've just now done the Target case study. I'll show you the case studies in a second. But I have them read about 14, 13 articles, whatever, on the Target breach, and then identify the major themes. What were the things that people found when they researched this breach that were the root causes of the problem, right? And they traced it back mostly to this, right? If you go in, we basically give them a sample of an organization chart. Everyone recognize this, right? It's from the Nice. Right. And then we give them some examples within the organization itself, some of the major responsibilities, and then even some of the titles of the jobs that people should have within the organization, right? And then we go a little further, and then they have to actually go in and build their chart. So, they have to go in and actually give me an organizational chart, and then they have to identify the roles and responsibilities for their specific organization. Now, a lot of cases, what I'm having them do are like local municipalities. So they might have 15 employees, right? But it gives them an idea. Does a local municipality need a data information management plan? Yeah, right? It may not be as sophisticated as Target, but they still need to go through and do the same types of checks, right? So, and what we're finding on some of this is that a lot of the organizations we've run some of these exercises for the first time last semester, and a couple of organizations came back and said these were really good things that made us think about areas that we hadn't even looked into. So that gets more in the next couple sections, but that's what they do in that exercise. All right. And we have them go into physical security. And do some physical security analysis. So we talk about a risk assessment, some of the simple formulas that we use in measuring risk, talk about the difference between quantitative and qualitative, labeling, all that kind of stuff. And then we actually have them go in and do something. So we're going to have them actually do some type of analysis using a table that we created. And now they're going to, if you take a look, a lot of these will have red dots in here, which means they have explanations. So we'll explain how do we get this. What was the formula that we use, or the algorithm that we use to come up with this, right? And then they can pick their own inventory items and do an analysis on them. So it could be a server that they're analyzing. It could be a facility, right? They can pick whatever they want to pick, right? But they get an idea of how to actually do some type of simple quantitative, and then we even talk a little bit about qualitative analysis. Okay. We'll go in and we see how to do a risk registry. What's the good part of this? Anyone recognize some of this stuff? Where does this come from? Some 2702, right? These are actually, I built these tables right off of some of the recommendations from the ISO 2702, right? And again, you can start filling in these, and they start to fill this stuff in. And then they can basically rank things and so on by the values and so on, right? But they get the idea how to build tools to make this process easier, to make it more standardized. And actually, again, it's part of what they're doing is determining prioritization of how the organization is going to spend their resources in protecting their information assets. Right? So we give them a sample, and then some definitions on, and then they see also how to go in and do. Anyone recognize this? Again, 2700 talking about doing qualitative analysis, right? And having categories, labels, and labeling things rather than just giving them dollars, right? Dollars that we're analyzing. Okay. Next thing we get into is the process of doing an audit. Now, this was my background, my Navy background. One of my jobs was to do physical audit of the ship, right? You go through state by state, and you're looking for things, right? And so we give them the idea of actually doing a physical audit. So we go into each of the different areas that are incorporated in an audit. And they can do things like determine, again, we do things with labels. So in a lot of cases, there's drop-downs that they can incorporate information into. But they're going to identify the level of threat, and then the different checkpoints. And by the way, can you find these listed checkpoints somewhere that you should do on a physical audit? Well, there's some good sources for this. Again, the 2702 spells out all the controls, all the things you should check, right? And there's also a NIST document out there. Exactly. So a lot of stuff can be traced back to the NIST documents as well. So I try not just to make this stuff up. Everything is based on documents that are out there that the students can actually use after the class is over. And you can see clear this out into different components. C-lock systems. These are controls right in the 2702 standard. Every one of these is control. And sometimes I'm thinking about having actually go and identify controls, the number for each of the controls. Now, I don't have them do this whole thing because it would be a little overwhelming, but they pick what's appropriate. Isn't that what a real organization does? You don't do everything necessarily. You do what's applicable to your organization, right? So part of it is learning how to take a document like that and apply it to the type of organization you're working with. If you're in a big organization, that's what they're going to do anyhow. They're going to take a big group and break it up into, you do this part, you do this part, identify first what's applicable, and then what we're doing on each of the controls. Okay. And it goes all the way through all the controls. Did you notice? I should have brought a finished one. You see, I also have pictures, because in a control document, when you're doing a physical audit, what are you going to ask a lot of times? You want a picture of the space. You want a picture of the issue that you're dealing with, right? So, I mean, like most of them have cell phones now. They have good cameras. And I actually want a picture of what they found, right? Or controls that they're implementing, whatever. So there's a section that they can upload pictures into it as well. Now here's the actual control list. Basically what they're going to do here is go through what are security controls, what are the different types. This varies within organizations though, right? One control in one organization might be deterrent and avoidance. Another one might be preventative and so on. So we're going to go through, first thing we do is describe, and even his red up here, again, tells them what type of control it is. We define what's the difference between a deterrent control and avoidance control, right? And then we go into what's the primary objective of that control. Is it to protect confidentiality, integrity, or availability? You can expand this chart. I mean, it's not limited to what we have here. But basically, this is the master control list that they go through all of the 2702 controls, right? When they get done, they have an idea what 2701 and what 2702 are all about and how you would use them in an organization. So that's the idea behind this, that they get some type of operational understanding of security management, right? All right. You get the idea, but each one of these has all the way down to compliance, which is basically a checklist. But then the other thing we have in each of these is we have case studies. And there's all the lessons. I had them in one folder, but I thought it was distributed in one collection. Oh, here we go. Right. So here's the readings for the case studies. There's a small list of the readings. I have 15 total. You can pick one, but these are required readings that we have to do. And then the case study itself. So we sort of give a little background on what the case was all about. And now it's their job to go in and actually research this and come up with conclusions. And then the whole idea behind the case studies, I mean, in most of my classes when I give case studies, I want it to thread to the actual exercises that they're doing in the class. And that's what they should be doing here. So they should pick out 2 or 3 issues. By the way, I did cherry pick the article. So, because I really want to point them to some very specific things that they found in the entire case. But it is concrete. These aren't things that were made up. I mean, some of these studies were pretty intensive studies and found very specific things. Well, not only that, but just the action target took. You can tell what major issues were. Yeah. Well, I know. That's the thing I said about the case studies. It's going to be really, very relevant this year, but it's going to have to be on the next year. One problem I had, I taught one of the previous classes we did for, had a bunch of case studies in it. I ended up having to get rid of it after a year. So, I mean, one of the things we'll try to do is keep these case studies relevant. Each year we'll try to do and the approach I tried to take on the case studies were not only the type of data breach, but who were the attackers. So different types of attacks. Like some were nation states. Other ones were someone looking for profit. And so on. So.
funding mechanism for those guys?
I think it'd be a good idea, especially this kind of stuff. It's impossible to have it relevant unless it's updated at least every other year. You know? Yeah.
So, Bill and I do talk after this, and they're doing the log analysis.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of ours, and we're kind of doing the exact same thing. And because of our production volume, we just went through that much more time.
Right.
You know, to make it still realistic with some of the so I think that's a good round.
Yeah.
We have like 3 million logging.
Yep.
And we don't even know if it's right. So that's really just part of it.
Yeah, and I think one of the things I tried to do in this one was, I mean, we're pretty fortunate. We have CompTIA right in our backyard. So I talked to a couple of people that were associated with the certification, and I wanted to know, you know, who were some of the people that served on the advisory team when they put the test together, the objectives and all that. What I was able to find actually was some companies in the area that have CSSCs, and people also took their CASP certification, and can come in and do desk speaking to students to talk about what does the actual process look like when you do it within an organization. So by the time we have them actually step out to an organization or one of the local municipalities, they have some realism on how to actually put this thing together, and how to form the committees, and how do they determine budgets and roles and responsibilities and all that kind of stuff. So I mean, I can tell you one of the things that we've seen with this is that the healthcare organizations in our district are constantly having to go through the accreditation process with their information systems, right? They are eating this up. They're like, we got a lot of your people that know how to, configure routers and firewalls and how to harden our servers and all that stuff. But very few of them had any exposure to this kind of stuff at all, right? So, and the other thing that we found also is they will come in and talk about, yeah, it is my responsibility as the chief information officer that this is done, but I dole it out to my technical staff, and that goes all the way down to the technician. So, they hear from the horse's mouth that this is applicable. These are the things that they're going to have to perform. The 3 things we really try to deal with this year is, one, giving our students more realistic experience in the classroom, so we're ready to handle the things that they're going to have to put in the field, especially if we want into healthcare, finance, and so on. I can just tell you, I've had several students over the years come back to me and say, you just didn't prepare me for what I was going to walk into. I didn't know I was going to walk into, a block-long room and servers and routers, and no one sits in them all day. Right? No one sits there all day. They're basically something we're going to manage remotely. Right? And it is just this massive volume of devices that we have. So part of what we've been trying to do is give more exposure to students and the environment that they're actually going to work with. We've got a couple of really good partners in the Chicago area. Anyone work with Arcon? They're a company out of Chicago, but they do remote management of other organizations, right? They install the clients and all the things, but they have companies all over the country that they manage. Our students that are hired there love it because they come in their shorts and sandals every day, right? They never really interface with the customer. It's all remote data analysis, right? But yeah, I think it's good to expose students to those types of things, or to a running process. We have CDW right in our backyard as well, and I love bringing them to the tour of CDW because they talk about the cost of downtime in an environment like that. It is just incredible. Students can't relate to the cost of downtime for a company that size. It's all based on web-based comments. And why they have redundancy over redundancy over redundancy, and why they really, if you want to talk about a company that goes through their systems step by step, control by control by control, CDW is a really good. And they give our students a really good practical example why these things are important. And more importantly, why companies are willing to spend the kind of money they do, and more importantly, why they're willing to pay a few percent salaries that they're willing to do. A lot of students just don't get that. How can someone make this kind of money doing this? Well, when they see what it costs for the system to balance, it's just part of the day. It's incredible that it's classroom. So that's one of the things we've been trying to do. And then the other thing is, I really want our students to start to do research and use the tools that are, I mean, all this work has been done because no one organization can do this. The task is too monumental, right? So everything from using the CVE database and analysis sites to ISO controls or any of the other controls out there. I just happen to use ISO because I want to. You can't go deep in any one of them if you give them access to all of them, right? So we picked ISO as ours that we're going to delve deeper into. But to have them actually go through the documents and see what is 27001 versus 27002 and why, how do you use it? If you're going to go out and buy this thing, how do you use it within your organization, or how do organizations use it? Right? And then the third thing is I really want them to talk to professionals out there of what's going to be expected of them when they hit the workplace. Because most of them just have no idea. They configure a switch or a router, or they install a server and work with authentication systems. But what's going to be required of them when they get in the field, and how are they going to do transitions into taking over those responsibilities? And I can tell you, most employers really enjoy coming to me and talking to them that way because it lets us better prepare them for what they're looking for. But that's what we've basically done on here. Now, I've also created exams, multiple choice exams on here. There's a final exam with multiple choice, and then there's some open-ended questions. And I tried to tie these as close as possible to the CASP objectives without feeling proprietary information. So, and the other thing that we've done, just like most of our other courses, we give you more than you should need in the course. You can pick and choose how much you want to use. That's what we use. And then we have unit exams for each one. And you get the course outline, the syllabus, all the things that we normally distribute with our courses. The main difference between this course and all the other ones is it's not going to be equipment-based, it's operational-based. Because we figure they've already configured switches, they've already worked with operating systems, and so on. So it's a little bit different approach that we're using in this one. Right? That's the idea behind this course. We've got a couple videos that we incorporate with it. We also put a document in there on how you can anyone buy 2700 documents, ISO documents, and how to get the academic pricing on them. Because you pay I think it's like $80 compared to $300, isn't it? It's ridiculous difference. And your students can buy it for $80 versus $300, right? And then we go in and show them how to access all the NIST documents, how to download both the interactive and the PDF for the NIST. And then, of course, we go to a whole bunch of different websites. In that one, we haven't seen this, so we've got a bunch of sites like this. Kevin and I, all we did one day was try to find as many sites as possible for resources for the class. I was blown away how much there was for sites. And these are all tools that people created when they can work in the field. And this is just one. You see this one now? So this is all built off. This isn't the CVE database. This is an analysis site for what's in the CVE database. Pretty cool. I mean, it's, so you can search by vendor, by product, by years, by categories of vulnerabilities, and then they have each of the different links to the different websites for the different vendors that have their top 10 list or top 100 list of vulnerabilities or whatever. There's a list to them as well. And it's all It's background by MITRE still. So I've got a bunch of tools out there now that are really good for the classroom, this kind of stuff. So we use this one. Anyone use the globe one now, the globe of attack, where you can see live attacks, you do the analysis of what's the most common attack right now, what's in the area. And then the last thing that we do as part of this class is that we make every single student in that class register to be a participant in InfoGuard. Everyone can do InfoGuard. You get your students join. I think it's a great thing. What are the benefits? We're often going to get a better network of people looking to hire people this way. Right? So it's really a great way to network your students out to. I laugh. I go to a lot of conferences. Like, you're putting 300 students a year for your program. How are you getting them all jobs? Well, we're not. I mean, we can't. We have a small staff. We couldn't possibly be out there getting every student jobs, but we are making the link that they can get jobs. That's one of our best groups that help us. We're always trying to find that people. ISSA is another one. And the way we've done it, we just each of our. I mean, we only have 5 faculty on our staff, and each one of us pick a different group, and we work with that group and introduce our students to the group and so on. So we're part of the Microsoft Music Group, which repeats every month, and they go to the meetings for that. The Linux user group, we have most of them join. Cisco organizations will deal with it. And then I can tell you the last thing that I've done with this course is that we spent about $12,000 between us and the other center to buy the list of all the chief information officers. Do you know how many chief information officers there are in the country? You want to guess? At least they're members of the organization. You can buy the list, right? 27 members. I think that's going to be a really valuable list for us as a community, though, because we're going to start to now harvest the businesses that we can do, support some sponsorship, more input from those people, that kind of stuff. But this year, the centers got together and decided that we're going to approach it. I think it's going to be a valuable information. I don't know the legalities of that yet, because Lynn runs our system with that. It comes into our Vocus system. I don't know if we can just give that out or what the controls are on that. We can use that information. I know we can use it for mailing and stuff like that. But if we can slice it and dice it and share it regionally, I mean, we're probably going to want to do something. You can use it for promoting your competitions or events that you're whatever. We decided we didn't want to do it alone, but we decided all the centers could get together and invest in something like that. Right. And then the last thing that I want to incorporate with this is that part of their responsibility in this as well is that when you are a member of a team like this, it's your job to increase awareness within the organization that hires you. Right? You're probably going to be on a team that increases awareness of all the employees that work in the organization. So what we do in this course also is we actually have a 1 credit hour course. Anyone use our security awareness course? Use it? So we published that like, 5 years ago. It's going to be brand new, the new version is going to be out this year. But we give that to the students and say, when you're hired by organizations, here's where you implement an awareness program. Right? Here's where you buy posters. Here's where you find out how to run events. Right? Here are the 10 elements of awareness that people in organizations need to know about. Right? And we actually give it to them as part of it. I mean, we don't tell our organizations, but when they come in, the students give it to them. If you're doing a project and you want to use it, and if you're awareness of the organization, most of the time, the organization is taking it to them. Most of them have something going on, but you get a little better, I should say, a more complete picture of things that they can do on the government side. And then, I guess the last thing to add with that is that we normally get like someone from Dell or anyone been to Dell's 6th floor at the headquarters in Austin? Famous 6th floor, no? Most organizations, I mean, a big part of the organization now is data analytics, and it ties directly to security, right? And most students are just blown away when they find out that, yeah, Facebook sells information. Twitter sells information. You agreed to that when you signed up. And I mean, part of what we got to do is look at what does the actual Facebook agreement look like. Anyone actually read the Facebook agreement when you signed up for Facebook? You know, it's longer than the U.S. Constitution. And you probably need a host of lawyers if you want to interpret everything that says in it, right? But they farm out their data. It's one of the ways they make money, right? They don't just give out all the data, but like Dell, by working with and purchasing data from these organizations, the sixth floor basically monitors social networking, right? And they can tell if someone is unhappy with a Dell product. And they can intervene in someone, right? An email, coupon, or whatever, right? But if all the major companies are out there doing the same thing, to improve the reputation of their company, they have to plug in with that in social networking. The political parties, all of them, right? And again, it ties directly back to security, right? Because as soon as you don't want shared, and you do want shared. And it's up to the information security technicians and managers within the organization to manage it. Right? Just the simple things as scanning your organization on Google and finding what's out there, open them, and then how do I find out things that are out there aren't quite easy to find. Right? But that's what's in the course. We should have everything published first week of March. It's going through the review process right now. Anyone use Enter? Somebody would Enter? Somebody's got to do all of them. You don't know that one, right? Anyone do all of them? No? Yeah, what it is, it's your course publishing website for all the materials that are generated through a Department of Labor grant. All of our courses, that's the way we publish them, is through the Enter site. If you go up to our website, I think we have a link to it there somewhere. But it's called Enter, and it's the Department of Labor's course sharing website. Now we're still going to share it through CASP. So you still can go over to our website and go under resources and still be there. You can get to it either way. And go under resources. It'll still be the same way. Most of you've gotten materials like that security awareness course open. You go here, it gives you the outline, the syllabus, all the tests, all the PowerPoints, all the labs, right? So it'll be up here as well in March. And by the way, in March you're going to see about half of these go away because they've been outdated, and we've been having some licensing issues and so on. We're going to get rid of all the really old stuff, and it'll be all the newer stuff that's up there. Which course?
Well, we like the intro to security course.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the things have just been released recently. So, yeah. So they're like the version 2 of the Security Plus is out there now. By the way, right now we're in the process of Security Plus even as we have a group of subject matter experts going through and determining which one should we throw out, which one should we update, and which one should we add. So that course will be renewed as soon as we have a source of funding, like, waiting for some funding. I know, yeah. All right, that's it.